It's James Murray. We're in the Net News Ledger newsroom, and joining us on the phone from Dryden is the Honourable Bob Nault, the Member of Parliament for Kenora. Bob, thanks for taking the time to share with our readers.
It's a pleasure to be here, James. Looking forward to talking to you.
There's been a lot of activity happening in Northern Ontario in recent months. It's starting to look like the region's getting some of the needed attention that's so critical for building up the economy and improving the way of life.
Well, I would say that after years and years of falling backwards and sort of not progressing, we're starting to get people realizing that 80% of Ontario's landmass, Northern Ontario as it's referred to, is critical to the success of the province, and it can only happen if we start to develop the infrastructure that will allow us to be competitive. And I think you're starting to see that first and foremost here in regions like mine. That's a third of Ontario's landmass and is the same size as France. Of course, that if we don't do the right thing by connectivity, by all-weather roads and grids and all the major initiatives that we're starting to hear about, it's pretty hard to imagine us getting into the modern era and even competing and getting people to start coming and living in Northern Ontario.
Now, there's been a lot of work being done lately. There was an announcement last week with the federal government, the province, and Matawa First Nations to bring important high-speed broadband internet into northern communities. What does that mean in the north to you?
Well, it means to me that we are starting to realize two things. One, that there's a lot of people living north of us in the more southern parts of the riding, whether you're in Thunder Bay, whether you're in Kenora or Dryden, Red Lake or Sulikout. There's a large population of people who have the need for high-speed internet, the need for fiber optics to be put in. If we are going to educate our kids who rely on the internet these days for all sorts of projects, we can't run governments because we can't even download. So this announcement to me is an indication by governments, both provincial, federal, and obviously First Nation governments, that this is a critical piece of infrastructure. And this is, lastly, tells me that this is the beginning of a vision that the politicians that are in office see for the North that will have huge benefits in the long term.
Now, one of the key issues, especially in the far north, has been water and having good, solid drinking water. You've been making a lot of announcements in the Kenora riding. What's happening on the issue of water specifically for First Nation communities?
Well, not too long ago in the budget, Canada made a commitment to the Indigenous population here in the north and generally across the country that people should not have to feel fear when they turn their tap on and want to take a drink of water or to bathe their children. And so we have put a lot of resources into repairing the water and wastewater infrastructure of First Nations here in our region. And so very proud to see the announcements of all these projects for the 38 out of the 42 First Nations that I represent. But more generally in the north, we're starting to see the work that was committed to on the ground of either studies and or repairs. And this bodes well for the next phase, which is we're going to have to put in place brand new facilities when the studies are done, but we're also going to be able to train and monitor these wastewater and water facilities so that Northerners can expect what all Ontarians and Canadians expect, which is to be able to drink and have fresh water at their disposal.
Excellent. Now, one of the issues in the north always seems to be getting connected, whether it's by air or by road. And in the case of the north, what is happening to be increasing the connecting the north approach?
Well, when we talk about connecting the north, we look at connecting the north from the perspective of electrical grids. And electrical grids obviously means connecting Northerners to the grid versus diesel generation Those are in its final environmental assessment processes for some 17 communities. But more particularly, we announced for Pikangikum First Nation a new project to develop the grid from Red Lake to Pikangikum as the first phase of the connectivity for electrification of the communities in the north. This is highly critical, important if you want to also include all-weather roads as connectivity, because all-weather roads will then open up the whole north to development once the grid is put in place and the all-weather roads are put in place. And then we'll see the quality of life, standard of living improve, because it'll be cheaper to live in the north. The food products will be cheaper, and building an economy will have more opportunities to be developed. So we are in the process of connecting the north to each other and looking for First Nations to approve certain corridors that will go from, and I believe will be up the Red Lake Road. The second in our region will be up the Pickle Lake Road, and it'll connect the First Nations near the Ring of Fire that will connect to the Pickle Lake Road. Those are the kinds of initiatives that we know will have impacts for the communities in the north and for the southern communities in the north, who will then we'll be able to create a bigger economy and a better partnership, because we'll be all, as you've been mentioning, connected to each other in different ways.
Well, it's probably one that a lot of people in southern Ontario and probably around tables in Toronto, but even in Thunder Bay, if they haven't been up north to go to a grocery store, people down here complain about the price of food, but when you go up north, the further north you go, the prices are just amazing, and it's the cost of transportation.
For sure, the cost of living is dramatically higher than it is in Thunder Bay or Kenora or Dryden. Hard to imagine, because everybody does think that our prices are quite high. And so transportation is a key. Transportation in many forms is the key to success. When it comes to food products, generally speaking, if you have to fly your food in, you know that you're going to pay a premium for it, and then you end up with people who are living on social assistance, can't afford healthy food, so it will have an impact for sure, James. So what we're looking for, obviously, is to improve the quality of life, which means not just healthy living, which means better health care, because now people have to fly out of the north to urban hospitals. All these issues of quality of life can be changed if we put these basic infrastructure initiatives into play.
And Bob, for our readers and viewers, this is part one of a two-part interview, and I want to thank you for part one, and for our readers and viewers, stay tuned for part two.